third animal that we are going to cover, which is the frog. Now you might be knowing that frogs are amphibians. That means they can live in two different kinds of environments. They can live in freshwater and they can live on land as well. They belong to phylum Chordata, that is class Amphibia. So that is why they are called amphibians. And the most common species of frog that are found in our country, that is Rana tigrina. So we are going to discuss that, keeping that in mind. So Rana tigrina, that is the most common species of frog found here. Now you need to know that the frogs, they do not have a constant body temperature. That means they are cold-blooded. And I hope you know the scientific term that is there for cold-blooded animals, that is poikilotherms. That means animals who cannot regulate their internal body temperature in relation to the environment. Additionally, one factor that you might have seen in frogs is that they can sometimes change their color. When they are in grasses, they are green in color. On dry land, they may become a little brownish in color. That means they have this protective coloration known as camouflage and mimicry. So, two extra things that are used for defense: camouflage and mimicry. That means they're able to mimic the surroundings very well, and they're not easily identifiable just by noticing them. Now, frogs are not seen during extremely harsh summers and winters, because that is the time when they're taking shelter in deep burrows within the soil to protect themselves from the harsh temperatures. So that is known as summer sleep, which is estivation, and winter sleep, which is known as hibernation. Now coming to the morphology of the frog, and this is the structure that you can see. Now the skin of the frog, very, very important. It's an amphibian, and the skin of most amphibians is moist. It's very moist to touch, very smooth, slimy, and slippery, and that is because of the presence of mucus. Now the skin is always maintained in this moist manner. The color of the dorsal side is usually olive green, and it sometimes has dark spots on it that you can see over here, here, and here. On the ventral side, the skin is pale yellow in color, with usually no extra spots on it. The frog never directly drinks water, but it just absorbs it through the skin. So that is another function of the skin, to absorb the water from the environment. Now the body of the frog is divisible into the head and the trunk. So head and the trunk. The tail is not there, it does not have a neck. Above the mouth, there is a pair of nostrils over here. So these are the nostrils. And eyes, they're bulging and they're covered by a nictitating membrane. So let me just write it here. Eyes covered by, we can also call it the third eyelid, by a nictitating membrane. And that protects them, that protects the eyes when the frog is in the water. Now on either side of the eyes, there is a membranous tympanum, which is this tympanic membrane that you can see over here. It acts like the ear of the frog, and it receives sound signals. And then it has a pair of forelimbs, a pair of hind limbs that help to swim, to leap, to walk, and move from place to place. The hind limbs, they have 5 digits, and they're larger, they're more muscular. And the feet, they have webbed digits that help in swimming. So as you can see in the diagram, webbed foot is mentioned over there. And frogs, they exhibit sexual dimorphism. That means the males and the females can be distinguished by the presence or absence of certain features. Now in the males, they have a presence of a sound producing organ known as a vocal sac, and a copulatory pad is present on the first digit of the forelimb. And both of these things, they are absent in the female frog. So that is a rough idea about how the structure looks like. The next important thing is how the internal organs of a frog look like. So here's a diagram to help you understand this in a little better way. So you can see the heart over there, the esophagus is there, the liver, the stomach, the intestine, the rectum, the cloacal aperture, which is actually the end to the cloaca, and urinary bladder, into which the ureters from the kidney they come, and fat bodies are there, just situated just next to the kidney. The lungs are there, the gallbladder is close to the heart. So that is the structure. So let's do it step by step. Now the body cavity has lots of different systems. Coming to the digestive system. Now the digestive system, it has the alimentary canal and the glands. The alimentary canal is not very long because frogs are carnivores. The length of the intestine, it is not so long, it's not so much. So that is why not a very long alimentary canal is there. And the reason is that frogs are carnivores. Now the mouth, it opens into a buccal cavity. So we need to mention that here. It opens into the buccal cavity that leads to the esophagus through the pharynx. So buccal cavity, then the pharynx, then the esophagus. And finally the esophagus, it opens into the stomach, then the intestine, the rectum and the cloaca. Now the liver over here, very important. The function of the liver is to secrete bile that is actually stored in the gallbladder. So that is the function of the liver. Then you have the pancreas, which is a digestive gland, just like in the case of humans. Now it secretes pancreatic juice that contains digestive enzymes. So that is the function. The food is captured by the bilobed tongue, enters the mouth. Digestion is by the action of HCl, which is hydrochloric acid, and gastric juices that are secreted by the lining of the stomach. Now the partially digested food, it moves from the stomach to the first part of the intestine, and this is where it is known as the chyme. So let me put that into the diagram. Let me just change the color. Okay, so the food comes here, and this is where HCl and the gastric juices act upon the food. Over here, the food turns into a partially digested substance known as chyme. This is passed into the first part of the intestine, which is known as duodenum. And the duodenum also receives the bile from the gallbladder that comes through a duct. And the pancreatic juices from the pancreas also flow, that is through a common bile duct. So from the pancreas and the gallbladder, there's a common duct that reaches the duodenum. The bile helps to emulsify the fat, and the pancreatic juices, they digest carbohydrates and proteins. At the end, the final digestion, it takes place in the intestine. The digested food is absorbed by numerous folds in the inner wall of the intestine. Those are known as villi, and smaller ones known as microvilli. The undigested solid waste, it moves out and goes out of the body through the cloaca. Coming to the respiration, the frogs, since they live in both kinds of environments, they need to respire on land and in water both. And in that case, the respiration is totally different. So when it comes to water, the skin helps to respire. So that is cutaneous respiration. And when the frog is on land, in that case it has lungs that help it to respire. Additionally, one important thing about the cutaneous respiration when the frog is in water is that the dissolved oxygen in the water, it actually enters the skin by the process known as diffusion. And as I told you, on the land it has lungs, and obviously the buccal cavity is there, and also the skin. The respiration that is by lungs, that is known as pulmonary respiration. And the lungs are a pair of elongated pink sac-like structures that you can see over here in the diagram. They are in the upper part of the trunk region that is known as the thorax. And during estivation and hibernation, the gaseous exchange takes place through skin. Now let's learn about the vascular system of the frog. So coming to the vascular system, it's well developed and it is closed. That means the blood, it flows within proper vessels. They have a lymphatic system also. So that is an important thing that needs to be mentioned. There's a well developed lymphatic system also. The blood vascular system, it has the heart, the blood vessels and blood. The lymphatic system has the lymph channels and the lymph nodes. Now the heart, as you can see over here, that is a muscular organ that is situated in the upper part. It has 3 chambers. It has 2 atria and 1 ventricle. And it's covered by a membrane known as pericardium. So that needs to be mentioned here. The triangular structure called sinus venosus, it joins the right atrium. It joins the right atrium. And the purpose is it receives the blood through all the major veins that are combined to form the vena cava. And the ventricle, it opens into a sac-like conus arteriosus. So let me write it down here, conus arteriosus. And that is on the ventral side. The blood from the heart is carried to all parts of the body by the arteries, which forms the arterial system. The veins collect and give the blood to the heart through the venous system. Now sometimes there are special venous connections between the liver and the intestine, as well as between the kidney and lower parts of the body. Now the former is called a hepatic portal system and the later is called a renal portal system. Now the blood in case of frogs, let's study what the components are there. It has plasma and it has different cells. The cells are red blood cells or erythrocytes, white blood cells known as leukocytes, and platelets. So these 3 kinds of cells, and then there is plasma. The red blood cells, they are nucleated. They have a red colored pigment known as hemoglobin. The lymph is totally different from blood. In the lymph, it is lacking few proteins and RBCs. Remaining, it has the plasma and the white blood cells. It carries nutrients, gases, water to the different sites that need those kind of materials. The circulation is achieved by the pumping action of the muscular heart. Coming to the method, how the elimination of wastes is carried out, that is the next thing that we need to do. So the elimination of nitrogenous wastes, it's carried out by a well-developed excretory system. And the excretory system, it has a pair of kidneys that you can see over here, and a ureter is there that takes the waste material from the kidney towards the cloaca. Now the urinary bladder is also there. All these materials, they are compact, they are red, and kidneys are bean-like structures that are situated on both sides of the vertebral column. Each kidney has units, functional units known as nephrons. And there are two ureters that emerge from the kidneys in the male frogs, and in females the ureters and oviduct open separately into the cloaca. A urinary bladder is also there that is ventral to the rectum. Since the frog, it excretes urea, it is known as a ureotelic animal. And the excretory wastes, they are carried by the blood into the kidney where it is separated and excreted outside the body. The system for control and coordination, that means the nervous system, is also quite well developed. It has both the neural system and the endocrine glands. So two parts of the control and coordination systems in case of frogs. The chemical coordination is achieved by hormones that are secreted by the endocrine glands, and the most common ones that are found in the frog are pituitary gland, the thyroid, parathyroid, thymus, pineal body, pancreatic islets, adrenals, and the gonads. The nervous system, it's organized into a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system, a CNS and a PNS. The central consists of the brain and the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system, it consists of the different nerves, both cranial and spinal. In addition to these two, there's also one more system known as autonomic nervous system, that is sympathetic and parasympathetic. Coming to the details, the nervous system, it has 10 pair of cranial nerves, and as the name suggests, they all arise from the brain, which is enclosed in a bony box-like structure known as a brain box or a cranium, just like in case of humans. The brain is divided into three parts. That means the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain includes the olfactory lobes, paired cerebral hemispheres, and unpaired diencephalon. The midbrain, it has a pair of optic lobes. The hindbrain, that consists of the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. Now, an important thing about the medulla oblongata, it passes through the foramen magnum. So let me write it here, foramen magnum. And then it continues into the spinal cord, which is enclosed within the vertebral column. And coming to the sense organs, there are 5 kinds of sense organs. Now for the touch, which is the first one, it has sensory papillae. For the taste, it has taste buds. For smell, it has the nasal epithelium. For vision, it has the eyes, the bulging eyes. And for the hearing, it has the tympanum, which is the membrane, and the internal ears. Now out of these, eyes and the internal ears, they are better organized. The rest are just some kind of cellular aggregations near the nerve endings. Now the eyes, they are a pair of spherical structures situated in the skull. External ear is not there, only the tympanum is there. The ear helps to hear as well as to balance. So that is about the internal organs of the frog. The next important thing that we need to do is study about the male reproductive system of the frog. So first thing first, the male reproductive system, like in the diagram, it has a pair of testes, that means two testes that are stuck to the kidney by a double fold of the peritoneum. That fold is known as a mesorchium. The second important part is the vasa efferentia that are 10 to 12 in number, and here in the diagram you can see they are present in this area. So these are 10 to 12 in number. They enter from the testes into the kidneys and open into a canal known as the Bidder's canal. And finally it opens into a common duct known as the urinogenital duct that finally opens into the cloaca, and the waste material or the reproductive material is sent out through this common aperture that is known as the cloacal aperture. Now the cloaca in males, it's small. It's a chamber that is used to pass fecal matter, urine and sperms to the exterior. So that is about the male reproductive system. Coming to the female reproductive system, here is a diagram for that. So the first important part is ovary. There is a pair of ovaries that are not connected to the kidney in any way, and there is an oviduct that comes from each of the ovaries, and that opens into the cloaca separately. So you can see one duct coming from here and the other duct coming from here. Now one mature female can produce about 2,500 to 3,000 eggs or ova at a time. And fertilization is external. It takes place in water. The development involves a larval stage known as a tadpole. The tadpole, it undergoes metamorphosis to mature into an adult frog. Now, frogs are beneficial for mankind because they help to eat the insects and the pests, and so they protect the crops. They also maintain the ecological balance because they are an important part of the food chain and the food web. And in some cases, the legs of frog are also used as food by human beings. So that is the rough idea that was there about the frog that you need to know. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was useful.